According to the investigator's report, yesterday morning the Orange County Sheriff's Office received a disturbing tip. The caller refused to give his name, but urged police to go to a wooded area near the city's edge because someone needed their help right away. Dispatch sends a nearby patrol car to check out the area. At first, the grassy field appears undisturbed. But then, in a secluded spot about 30 feet from the nearest roadway, they find a man lying face down with his arms folded underneath him. He is cold and has no pulse. Immediately, the officers call for homicide detectives, who in turn request a medical investigator from the morgue to join them at the scene.
They're not quite sure, if it's foul play, if it's just collapse. They don't know what's going on.
And their case grows stranger by the minute. As soon as they roll over his body, they discover a startling array of clues.
A straight razor that was open. Also in his hand, he was clutching what looked like a syringe. And there was blood on his face.
Once all the evidence is cataloged and bagged, the body is immediately transported to the District 9 morgue. Now, it's up to Dr. G to piece together the strange set of clues.
He's definitely not your typical found dead in bed kind of guy.
Fortunately, a driver's license identifies the man as 60-year-old Andrew Hopper, and police are soon able to track down his daughter Marilyn in North Carolina. At first, she refuses to believe that the man found dead in a sketchy neighborhood could possibly be her father, but she comes around when she hears about the syringe in his hand. She explains that her father used a syringe every day, for good reason.
His daughter said he is diabetic.
He takes insulin, and he also has no history of any illicit drug use, alcohol use, doesn't even smoke, according to his records and his family.
Confronted with her father's strange and sudden death, Marilyn finds herself racked with feelings of guilt and remorse. But what concerns detectives is the specter of violence. And there are no witnesses to Andrew's death, except possibly the anonymous caller.
The area where the victim was found is a high crime area. The important thing is to first treat this as though it is a homicide.
He could have been really taken by surprise from behind, possibly.
If Andrew had been attacked, police have a killer on the loose. But they can only launch a full-scale investigation after Dr. G determines his cause and manner of death.
Homicide, suicide, natural or accident, everything's up for grabs here.
Could you hand me a mail chart, please, and an internal?
Yeah.
The first thing that Dr. G notices on Andrew Hopper's body is the object clutched in his palm.
It's interesting, he still has that insulin syringe in his hand. The needle's a little bent.
She immediately removes the syringe and then inspects his hands and wrists for any signs of a suicide attempt.
He had a razor blade underneath the body. I'm looking, maybe there's hesitation marks. I've had that many, many times, those kind of deaths where they start out with a razor and decide that's not the way to go.
But Andrew's arms are devoid of both cuts and scars.
I don't see anything.
Now, she turns her attention to the bloody wounds Andrew does have.
Oh, poor guy.
On his face.
One of his eye, both the upper and lower lids are very swollen. It has the appearance of somebody hitting him in the eye. It could be just from him falling face down, but I'm not sure at this point.
She leans in for a closer look at the injuries. Tiny details catch her eye, and they're moving.
Definitely some ants overall his body, which is very typical dying in an open field.
This finding confirms that the attack on Andrew's face was not inflicted by human hands.
The ants here in the south, we have fire ants, And so they will actually start eating away and cause these little kind of excoriations that really can look like you've been beaten up.
But then, just as a possibility of a homicidal attack seems to be fading, Dr. G makes an alarming new discovery.
What's going on here? This isn't looking good.
At Consumer Cellular, we pride ourselves on getting you the exact same nationwide coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost. But don't worry, we've got a lot more than that going for us. Woo! Like this beautiful store in Arizona, for example. It's the perfect place for me to tell you a little bit more about our phones and how they can become your phones. You name it, we probably got it. We have the top smartphones from all the major companies. If it's state-of-the-art cameras you want with space-age metal housing, we got them. If you want a smartphone with lots of bells and whistles but won't break the bank, we've got that too. We even have flip phones like the Iris Flip. If you're someone that doesn't need all that mumbo-jumbo and just wants something simple. And now, we even have watches.
We do.
No matter what device you choose, you'll be happy to know that if your data needs change,
No problem.
with our Smart Flex feature, you don't have to sweat it. Like say you're on a road trip out west and end up using a bunch of data. We can simply flex you up to the next data tier for as little as $5. Then, when you get home, you can flex right back down with no penalty. So you only pay for what you actually need.
With Consumer Cellular, you get the exact same nationwide coverage as the leading carriers for up to half the cost.
I know what you're thinking. What if I don't have one of these amazing stores in my town yet? Can I get these phones sent to me?
Yes, you can.
Will our award-winning customer service help me switch over or add a line for $15 to make my own family plan?
Of course they will.
Is it easy?
Easy as pie.
See that tower out there? It's a beauty. And there are thousands more like it, working hard for me and you, supplying 5G coverage to this beautiful nation of ours. We know how important coverage is. That's why we offer a risk-free guarantee. If you're not satisfied within 30 days of activation, you can pay nothing. Oh, look.
And for a limited time, new customers get their second month free. Call 800-311-5340. Find us in Target or visit consumercellular.com to switch today.
She knows what she's talking about. Pick up the phone.
If you're watching this Gerber Life Guaranteed Life Insurance commercial, there's a good chance that you're alive. And if you're not, well, this may not be of interest to you. Now, I know what you're thinking. Life insurance. I'm going to live forever. Death is what happens to other people. Well, for the sake of argument, let's assume you're wrong, and that someday you won't be watching TV anymore. I know, it's not easy to talk about, so I'll do the talking. If you're 50 plus and alive, you can apply for Gerber Life Guaranteed Life Insurance with guaranteed acceptance, regardless of your health. And since this life insurance is guaranteed, you don't have to get a medical exam. In fact, you don't even have to fill out a health questionnaire. For a free quote, just call 800-441-0899. Then, when you stop, if you stop watching TV, your family can use the insurance money to help cover your final expenses or anything else. For a free quote, call today, 800-441-0899. Your kids already inherited your ears, allergies, and questionable singing voice. Don't make them inherit your final expense tab, too.
Ready to party? I'm talking about Jackpot Party, the leading free-to-play mobile slots game that always gives you more. More Vegas action, more casino favorites. And the latest slots. Play Jackpot Party and win amazing surprises just for logging in. Download Jackpot Party for free and get a 45 million coin bonus. Jackpot Party, a party in every spin.
Dr. G spreads open the lids of Andrew Hopper's right eye. The normally white parts are bloody red.
He's got little burst capillaries from an increased pressure in those tissues.
This bleeding, known as a subconjunctival hemorrhage, can occur spontaneously when a person coughs or sneezes. But in forensic pathology, seen in decedents, it often indicates something much more ominous: strangulation.
We're gonna hold this.
Because you have stopped the blood pressures build up to the point where those capillaries can burst.
If Dr. G finds evidence of murder, it then launches into a much deeper, in-depth investigation.
Okay, Sandy. Alrighty, I'm going.
Slicing from shoulder to sternum, she makes the Y incision.
So the first thing I need to do is rule out trauma. I open up the chest cavity, open up the abdominal cavity.
The internal organs come into view, and on first glance, they look undamaged.
I take the chest plate off. I don't see any broken ribs. I don't see any free blood anywhere. So if there's trauma, it's going to be in the head or the neck.
Her first stop is the neck.
I'm looking for trauma, that's why I'm doing the neck, but you have to be really careful underneath that furrow because you're more apt to cut the skin.
If Andrew was asphyxiated, this is where the killer would leave the evidence.
You also want to make sure you don't cut the carotids too far up and so they can still bomb the face.
But after a thorough search of the area, Dr. G is left with a surprising conclusion.
And I do a layer-wise neck dissection, and I don't find any hemorrhage.
You have absolutely no trauma in this neck, no evidence of fracture, no hemorrhage.
It appears that Andrew's eye hemorrhage was unrelated to any foul play after all.
That could be from him falling and then laying there.
She needs to examine the head before completely ruling out a homicide. But with that likelihood fading, Dr. G must now consider the possibility of death by natural disease. And she knows exactly where to start looking.
People with diabetes have a much higher risk of dying from heart disease.
In some diabetics, the excess glucose or blood sugar can attach to proteins in the walls of blood vessels, making them thicker and stiffer. This in turn constricts the blood flow.
When that blood sugar has been high for that long, it affects your large vessels and your small vessels.
If Andrew had developed this condition, his heart muscles could have died from a lack of blood and oxygen, resulting in a fatal heart attack.
Usually, diabetics, when we see them dying suddenly, it's usually from heart disease.
To explore this theory further, she first removes the heart from the chest cavity.
I weigh it. It's very enlarged, at least twice what it should be.
Next, she dissects the organ, cutting all the way through to his arteries. And here the case takes another curious turn.
As expected, he has narrowing to the blood vessels that supply blood and oxygen in the heart.
But the narrowing is barely at 60%.
It looks relatively mild. We really often see it when they die suddenly, closer to 70-75% or beyond.
And there's another problem. Dr. G can find no signs of a major heart attack, like areas of pale, dead muscle.
You know, like there's no little sign that says, this trumps everything else.
Nearly halfway through the autopsy, and with no hard evidence to speak of, Dr. G finds herself back at square one.
I really have got to, again, put the pieces together and see how everything fits.
Now, she reconsiders two clues that could add up to a cause of death: Andrew's diabetes and the empty syringe.
And it looks like he died maybe right after he gave himself the insulin shot.
Insulin is a hormone that allows the body to control glucose or blood sugar levels. Without insulin, glucose levels can get too high and lead to complications. Many diabetics need insulin shots because their bodies don't produce enough insulin, or their bodies have become resistant to insulin. But too much insulin can also have a catastrophic and sudden effect.
You worry about hypoglycemia or insulin shock. Your blood sugar is really low to the point where your brain can't function.
To help determine whether this scenario is likely, she will examine one organ in particular.
Now, the stomach contents are interesting to me because people who get in trouble with hypoglycemia means that maybe they haven't eaten.
If Andrew hadn't eaten, his blood sugar was probably already low, and an insulin injection on top of that could easily have been fatal. She cuts open the stomach and peers inside. And it's completely empty. Most likely, Andrew had not eaten for 3 or 4 hours before his death.
So the fact that I find in his stomach no food really makes me worry that maybe this is a hypoglycemic attack. Blood sugar is getting lower and lower. He's starting to feel it. He misreads his symptoms and he ends up giving himself some insulin. The insulin actually causes his blood sugar to go even further and he collapses and dies from the low blood sugar.
Unfortunately, this scenario is nearly impossible to prove because post-mortem changes in the blood can throw off toxicology analysis.
Hypoglycemia is very difficult to diagnose post-mortem because as you die, your glucose goes down anyway. So oftentimes people have a glucose of 0, but when they died, it was perfectly fine.
With no way to know for sure, Dr. G must press on.
So then I do the rest of the exams, just looking to see what I can find.
But none of the remaining organs reveal anything definitive about Andrew's sudden death, not even the brain.
I reflect the scalp, I remove the brain. A stroke is another possibility, and I don't see any evidence of a stroke. I don't see any evidence of trauma.
At the end of the autopsy, she can finally eliminate trauma and homicide as the cause and manner of death. For now, she gives police a brief update. Andrew was not murdered.
It's going to say the cause of death is pending because I just don't have one.
Typically, it's at that point that we'll close our investigation.
But for his daughter, closure is yet to come.
What I'm going to do is pin the case until I can tell what really is going on.
Introducing the new Weight Watchers app. I've lost 60 pounds and I can still enjoy all of the foods that I love. Small changes lead to big results. Weight Watchers' new app features can make your weight loss journey easier. So all you gotta do is you. Join Weight Watchers today.
The windows come down. The shoes go off. The sleeves go up. The coast is there with open arms. Leave it all behind and settle in. Peter Millar.
Confused by the Medicare ABCs? If you have Original Medicare, then you have Parts A and B. Have you considered Part C? Medicare Part C is sometimes known as a Medicare Advantage plan, and it's one of the best ways to help protect yourself from out-of-pocket Medicare costs. If you only have Medicare Parts A and B, there are 3 things you should do. 1. Call the number on your screen. 2. Give the licensed insurance agent your zip code. 3. See what Part C plans with benefits are available to you. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy. Medicare Part C plans are available with benefits you may not be receiving with your current plan. If you're losing benefits, moving, or new to Medicare, you may be eligible to enroll in a plan today, but you won't know unless you 1. Call the number on your screen now. 2. Give the licensed insurance agent your zip code. 3. See what Part C plans with benefits are available to you. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy. Medicare Part C plans are available now. Plans may include benefits you are not currently receiving. Call today. You don't get a Medicare Advantage plan automatically. Call to find out if you're eligible for a special enrollment period. If you're losing benefits, moving, or new to Medicare, you may be eligible to enroll in a plan today. If you only have Medicare Parts A and B, there are 3 things you should do. 1. Call the number on your screen. 2. Give the licensed insurance agent your zip code. 3. See what Part C plans with benefits are available to you. 1, 2, 3. It's that easy. Medicare Part C plans are available with benefits you may not be receiving with your current plan. If you're losing benefits, moving, or new to Medicare, you may be eligible to enroll in a plan today, but you won't know unless you call. Call today for your free Medicare benefits review. The call is free. There's no obligation.
Call 800-408-3192. That's 800-408-3192. Call now.
Coming up next on True Crime Network.
Okie dokie, Ashley. We're ready, right?
Dr. G draws blood from Andrew Hopper's body for toxicology testing. But there's something that blood drawn from a dead body can't be tested for: glucose levels. So, Dr. G next inserts a 2-inch needle into Andrew Hopper's eye and draws clear fluid to send off to the lab. After completing the autopsy, she still doesn't know what killed him.
You're good on tox.
Toxicology is her last hope.
Hopefully he's got a clear-cut cause of death and lay all these suspicions to rest. If he doesn't, this may be an albatross around my neck for months to come.
6 weeks later, the results arrive.
So his first thing I look at is his eye fluid for glucose.
She finds the number right away, but it is not good news.
And his glucose is 0. So now I don't know if he's hypoglycemic. He may have been normal, or he may have been low.
A glucose level of 0 doesn't reveal anything because glucose levels continue to decrease after a person dies. Fearing that she may never be able to pinpoint a cause of death, Dr. G scans through the rest of the report, and suddenly, in the blood test results, she sees something incredible.
A 60-year-old man, I'm expecting them to inject insulin because he's diabetic and he's on insulin. But lo and behold, the 60-year-old fella has a super high level of morphine. It's certainly in the lethal level.
A powerful opiate, morphine is medically used for pain control. But as far as Dr. G knows, Andrew has no reason to be on it.
The family tells me he doesn't use any illicit drugs. The guy himself told the hospital on his last admission he doesn't use illicit drugs. Does he have a tumor? Does he have chronic pain? I don't have any history of that. I certainly didn't find a tumor. Why is he taking morphine?
The answer, she discovers, is on the last page of the toxicology report. Trace evidence on the syringe.
That syringe came back as diacetylmorphine, which is heroin. So he is injecting heroin in your body. Heroin breaks down to morphine, and it's the morphine that you're getting the high from with heroin. You know, I'm shocked by this. Now, why I should be shocked after these years in forensic pathology, I don't know. But a 60-year-old man, I'm a little bit surprised. So, although he has a bad heart, although he has diabetes, none of that is what killed him. He died from a high level of morphine from injecting heroin.
The anonymous call, the bad neighborhood, even the razor blade all suddenly makes sense. Now, Dr. G can finally explain how it all fit together in Andrew's mysterious death. Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Andrew Hopper steps into a rundown neighborhood 30 miles outside of Orlando.
That day, for whatever reason, he probably goes ahead and buys some heroin.
Dr. G believes Andrew next found a secluded spot, though possibly not alone.
He's with some people, most likely shooting up in this field, and they were probably using that razor to divide the drugs up.
As for Andrew, he brings a tool that he normally uses to treat his diabetes, the syringe.
He's got the insulin syringes anyway, and he went ahead and mixed the heroin and injected it into the syringe.
The heroin courses through his veins, quickly transforming into morphine. In a matter of seconds, the morphine attaches to receptor sites in his brainstem, causing his central nervous system to immediately shut down both respiratory and cardiac functions.
He has a sudden cardiac arrhythmia, sudden respiratory depression, and he goes down very quickly, probably with the syringe in his hand, and he's probably dead by the time he hits.
Maybe the others shake him, check his pulse, but they quickly realize he's gone.
And of course, the other people scatter. They know why he died.
Alone in the field, Andrew's body begins to attract ants. Only the anonymous caller saves him from more indignity. With all the information now in hand, Dr. G can officially rule Andrew Hopper's death an accident. Her only remaining question is how the family will reconcile Andrew's tragic and shocking death.
If they didn't know about it, I am sure this was a complete shock to them. But believe it or not, they could have just lied to us.
All she can do is communicate her findings and be there to support them, whatever their reaction to the truth.
I let the death certificate speak for itself. I wait till they get it and see if they have any questions for me.
Over her body, which is
I never got a call.
A series of strange clues helped lead Dr. G to the truth behind Andrew Hopper's tragic death. But after a fiery crash, all the clues to a truck driver's death may have gone up in flames.
At this point, they don't even know who the truck belongs to. It was so badly burned.
You may be eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan if you are turning 65, have limited income, or you are moving. See how a WellCare Medicare Advantage plan could get you some big benefits, including this all-in-one WellCare Spendables debit card to use for over-the-counter health items. Find out how easy it is to get all of your original Medicare coverage plus extra benefits. You could have medical coverage, coverage for prescription drugs, dental, vision, and hearing, and the WellCare Spendables debit card to make getting the coverage you need more convenient. The WellCare Spendables debit card can be used for over-the-counter health items. And here's more good news. You can get a WellCare Medicare Advantage plan with a $0 or low monthly plan premium. How can WellCare offer all of those benefits for a $0 or low monthly plan premium? It's simple. Medicare Advantage and Medicare Part D prescription drug coverage are important parts of Medicare. WellCare has a contract with Medicare to offer and provide these important options to you. Call right now to get your free copy of the WellCare All-in-One Guide. Call 844-975-0005 now. There is absolutely no obligation for requesting this free information. WellCare offers benefits that go beyond the basics, and we make them easy to use so you can support your best health. Call a licensed sales agent to see if you are eligible to enroll today and get your free copy of the All-in-One Guide with absolutely no obligation. Your free guide will provide information to make a smart choice for your healthcare coverage. Just call 844-975-0005. Remember, there's no obligation for requesting this free information, so call 844-975-0005. Call today.
Looking for a way to stretch the dollar? With Insurify, you can cut your car insurance bill in half. Scroll through dozens of prices and tap to switch online. That's it. No phone calls and no wasted time. Go to Insurify and save today.
I've been driving a truck all my life. A bear ran across the front of my truck, and I had to avoid him instead of hitting him. I got a good settlement for it and everything, and Dad helped me to go out and acquire gold and silver. I got the brochure from U.S. Money Reserve, and that's when I decided I can make more money with this than I could have leaving it in the bank. Because if I put 20 grand of paper in there and I have 20 grand of gold, paper ain't gonna make me any money. So I just bought it because it's my insurance policy.
If you'd like to learn more about why physical gold should be an important part of your portfolio, pick up the phone and call to receive the complete guide to buying gold, which will provide you with important, never-seen-before facts you should know about making gold purchases.
U.S. Money Reserve is one of the most dependable gold distributors in America.
My friends call me Zam. I naturally hold a lot of stress in my digestive system, as a lot of women do. When I travel, I get constipated, I get really poop shy. When I started taking DSO1, I immediately noticed how much lighter I felt, vibrant, alive. It really helps me stay regular, and you're not bloated at all.
I honestly recommend DSO1 to everyone.
"7:30 a.m. Every morning, like more than 140 million Americans, Dr. Jan Garavalia drives to the office. As a veteran medical examiner, however, she's developed a particular habit.
A lot of times I don't necessarily want to listen to the news because that really will tell me what my workload is.
But sometimes there's no avoiding it. One memorable morning, back when she was working at the Bexar County Morgue in San Antonio, Texas, every radio station was abuzz with breaking news of a local death.
It was a huge fire on the side of the freeway. It made all the news. They had the helicopter. So it was a much more horrific sounding accident than our typical bread and butter accidents.
As expected, the crash victim's remains arrive at Dr. G's morgue. Her investigator's report gives her the real scoop on the story.
He's got his seatbelt on.
According to the first trooper on the scene, the emergency call came from the southbound interstate shortly before dawn.
The crash occurred at approximately 3:45 a.m. You could see that there was an obvious vehicle fire, as a result of the crash.
The full impact of the devastation is staggering. An 18-wheel big rig has run off the freeway, and the flames have simply devoured it. Firefighters quickly arrive on the scene. After a few tense minutes, they manage to tame the blaze, but not in time to save anyone caught inside. Through smoke and steam, rescuers approach the charred wreck.
There was a subject that was sitting in the driver's seat, or what was left of the driver's seat.
They have a completely charred body in the cab of the truck.
Now it falls on Dr. G to answer a multitude of questions surrounding this dramatic, deadly crash. Was it a case of mechanical failure or reckless driving?
Could it have been alcohol? Could he have fallen asleep at the wheel?
Immediate concern of ours was that the driver might have been possibly intoxicated.
But whether or not the driver was drunk, Dr. G must determine the official cause of death, though it seems pretty cut and dry.
Looking at the crash scene, it was obvious that the driver died from the crash itself or from the following fire.
I think they had already made up their mind that he probably ends up with a lot of trauma and then dies of his injuries and a fire ensues.
But before looking into what killed the driver or what caused the accident, Dr. G has an even more urgent mission. She must first find out who the driver is.
At this point, they don't even know who the truck belongs to. It was so badly burned.
Putting a name to the remains will require an extraordinary two-pronged effort. On their end, police will investigate the wreck.
With a truck tractor trailer combination, the problem is that typically your drivers are not always the owner of that vehicle.
But if they can salvage a license plate or vehicle tag, it could lead them to a trucking company.
Once they figure out who owns the truck and who should have been driving, we're going to have to match characteristics to see if it could be the same person.
She'll put all her efforts into building the victim's biological profile, a list of physical characteristics that can be used for identification.
Height, weight, is it a male or female? Certainly there's a lot of female cross-country drivers.
Her findings will be critical because there's no guarantee that the driver on call was actually behind the wheel.
Who should be driving that truck may not necessarily be who was driving that truck.
Somewhere out there, a family is missing a father, a mother, a son, and only Dr. G can help reunite them. To document the condition of the body, one of the morgue technicians photographs the remains as Dr. G prepares to take a closer look.
I'm expecting maybe a vertebrae and some charred remains. Oh, brother.
But on her gurney, she's got much more than she bargained for.
He's pretty much intact. He's just very badly charred.
It is horrific to look at. Some of this bone is black. There's exposed bone here.
Still, 90% of the body's surface is destroyed.
Clearly burnt beyond recognition.
Dr. G begins searching the body for clues that could indicate the decedent's sex, ethnicity, age. Fortunately, she makes a quick discovery.
Although charred and burned, I can still see external genitalia on him. You can clearly see that he's male. Burnt, but there.
She next takes basic measurements.
6 feet tall, weighs at least 275 pounds. Probably even a little heavier since he's lost some fluids during that charring.
Simple observations like these carry great meaning.
If they tell me the driver is 5'6" and weighed 150 pounds, I would say no.
But here, things get trickier. With so much damage, there's no way to verify ethnicity through skin color.
You really, truly cannot tell one charred body from a next as far as visually identifying them.
A DNA analysis would provide the most reliable and irrefutable proof. But for Dr. G, it's not a viable option.
The DNA may take weeks. I know TV shows get it back in, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but that's not the real world.
Dr. G's best bet is to examine the toughest, most durable part of the body, the teeth.
The teeth will be the last things that are usually consumed in the fire. That's usually a great way to identify somebody. But I have to know really who we think you are. But I'm expecting that from the trucking company.
When investigators provide a potential name for the driver, Dr. G can simply track down any existing x-rays and dental records for a possible match. Carefully, she pries apart the jaw and peers inside. But what she finds is not at all what she expected.
I can't come up with these stories. I couldn't make up the interesting twists and turns.
Ready to party? I'm talking about Jackpot Party, the leading free-to-play mobile slots game that always gives you more. More Vegas action, more casino favorites, and the latest slots. Play Jackpot Party and win amazing surprises just for logging in. Download Jackpot Party for free and get a 45 million coin bonus. Jackpot Party, a party in every spin. At Consumer Cellular, we pride ourselves on giving you fast, reliable nationwide coverage at up to half the cost of the leading carriers. But don't worry, we've got more than that going for us. Like this beautiful store in Arizona, for example. It's the perfect place for me to tell you a little bit more about our phones and how they can become your phones. You name it, we probably got it. We have the top smartphones from all the major companies. If it's state-of-the-art cameras you want, we got them. If you want a smartphone with lots of bells and whistles but won't break the bank, we've got that too. We even have a flip phone, like the Iris Flip. We even have watches. I know what you're thinking. What if I don't have one of these amazing stores in my town yet? Can I get these phones sent to me?
Yes, you can.
Is it easy?
Easy as pie.
And for a limited time, new customers get their second month free. Call 800-918-5494. Find us in Target or visit consumercellular.com to switch today.
She knows what she's talking about. Pick up the phone.
Attention former Marines and family members stationed to Camp Lejeune. If you lived or worked at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, for at least 30 days from August 1953 to December 1987 and have been diagnosed with cancer, neurobehavioral effects, had a child born with birth defects or been diagnosed with fertility issues or more, significant compensation may be available. Call Legal Injury Advocates now to discuss your case. It has been proven that the water at Camp Lejeune during those years was extremely contaminated with toxic chemicals. Legal Injury Advocates has extensive experience helping you to get the maximum compensation you deserve. Don't wait until it's too late. See if you qualify today. You're not alone in this fight, and there are no upfront costs to begin your journey to justice. The call is completely free, and we're available 24 hours a day. Call Legal Injury Advocates to discuss your case now.
Call 1-800-239-0808 or visit www.lia.legal. That's 1-800-239-0808. Call now. Watch this. Witness what happens to this woman's bags under her eyes in an actual time lapse in just minutes. The problem will disappear before your eyes with a revolutionary topical formulation that works in just minutes, and the effects will last for hours. Over 1 million people are using this topical technique to visually reduce puffiness and bags, even fine lines and wrinkles on the face and forehead. Introducing Plexiderm. Jump on board and say yes to this amazing $14.95 Plexiderm trial. Order right now. We'll pay your shipping.
I am a prophet of God.
The whole church operated as a scam.
Why isn't someone doing something?
What we did not want is a Waco. We didn't want a standoff. He accepted his fate.
Cult Justice, Fridays at 8.
Dr. G taps on the charred teeth she finds in the mouth of her unidentified crash victim. For a moment, it looks like she has a full set to examine. But then she realizes they're not teeth at all.
He's got dentures. He doesn't have any teeth. So teeth is not going to be the way I identify this fellow.
The dentures do suggest he was not a young man, but she still does not have a clear ID. Her only option now is to try to uncover some other unique characteristic that may shed light on the victim's identity.
We're going to look for if he's had any surgeries, if he's had any old trauma to the bone that may compare to a history of old trauma.
Her only hope is that the inside of his body survived the inferno. But then, just before making the Y incision, Dr. G gets breaking news from the police.
The driver was identified by the company as Robert Clark of Appomattox, Virginia.
Robert Juan Clark.
We found out that he was around 6 feet tall, that he did weigh roughly that amount. He did wear dentures.
Given the circumstances and the matching characteristics, she is fairly confident that the decedent from the crash is indeed Robert.
Death notification was actually made by phone by me later that morning.
Robert Clark, an unmarried man with no children, but he is survived by 5 siblings and a mother who are devastated beyond grief.
He was not supposed to die. You know, parents usually die first. It was just awful. So, it was terrible. I couldn't believe it.
As the oldest child, Robert naturally took care of his family.
He was always there for whoever needed him. He was just a very lovable person. Biggest heart there is, you couldn't get a bigger heart.
Now, the family is shocked to learn police believe their Robert might have caused this accident by drinking and driving, falling asleep at the wheel, or even taking drugs.
Absolutely no way. No way. No way.
And most of all, they're terrified that he may have suffered terribly in the crash, or worse, in the heat and smoke of the fire.
That was devastating. Thinking about he burned up and was stuck in that truck.
The nightmare is all too real, but now that the victim has been identified, Dr. G can start searching for answers to these difficult questions.
Being a medical examiner, you don't get caught up in any kind of drama. You just kind of put the pieces together and help sort it out.
With gloved hands, Dr. G feels for injuries on Robert Clark's charred head.
I see a lot of fracture to the skull. The suture lines have kind of burst open.
Suture lines are remnants of where the bones of the skull fused together during childhood and early adulthood. The fact that Robert's sutures have burst open indicates that some kind of enormous pressure had been exerted on his skull. Yet Dr. G believes they're not from a crash impact at all, but rather from the fire's heat.
The fire will actually cause, especially this outer table of bone, to really fracture.
In fact, the head shows no external injuries that he could have sustained during the accident. But she knows trauma, even fatal trauma, can still be hiding inside. With an oscillating saw, her assistant cuts through the top of Robert's skull.
Alright, you got the key. The calvarum's a little more fragile than normal, but we can still use the saw.
Gently, with a steady hand, she removes it, then extracts the brain.
The brain is really kind of cooked. Gets a little firm and a little bit shrunken.
She dissects it, looking not only for trauma, but anything else that might have contributed to the accident.
I cut the brain to see if there's any trauma internally that I couldn't see externally, any stroke, any hemorrhage, anything that may have explained why he went off the side of the road. But his brain looks completely normal, except for the fact that there's some heat effect to it.
This finding rules out injury to the head as a cause of death. But this is just the first step in the hunt for trauma.
There's a whole host of other things that I could find. Multiple rib fractures, multiple internal organ trauma, lacerated liver, lacerated spleen. Sometimes even the heart can tear open, so I have to open the rest of his body.
Unlike the brain, however, his organs don't have a